Look, right now there is just so much noise out there about AI agents and what they can supposedly do for your business. But in this explainer, we are cutting straight through all of that to look at the actual risk layer of AI agents. We're going to build a concrete operating manual for your systems. We're talking about why you absolutely need to aggressively own your AI memory stack rather than just renting raw intelligence, and how you can actually pull that off without completely slowing down your engineering team.
Okay, so here's our four-part arc for today. We're going to look at the wrong argument everyone's having, the rent versus own split, why memory is actually infrastructure, and then we'll wrap up with a concrete boundary audit. So, think about this for a second. What are your agents actually allowed to do without your explicit approval? Seriously, if an AI agent can act without you physically clicking a button, who owns the record of what you actually wanted it to do? It's a question that's keeping a lot of technical leaders up at night, because that gap, the space between your intent and the agent's action, is exactly where your real vulnerabilities live.
Let's start with Act 1, the wrong argument. Right now, literally every technical leader is fiercely debating which frontier AI model they should use. Do we use OpenAI? Do we use Anthropic? Google? Look, that is a massive distraction. It just sucks all the strategic oxygen out of the room. The real question, the one you should be asking, is what your agents are allowed to do without a human in the loop. And almost no team has a clear, written record of that.
We saw a brief flash of this recently with that OpenClaw insurance incident. Long story short, an agent misread intent because the user's silence looked exactly like approval to the system. There was no owned record of what the user actually wanted, and that is exactly what happens when your system assumes permission instead of actually confirming it.
Which brings us to Act 2, the rent versus own split.
Think about it like this. Renting a car for a weekend trip? That makes perfect sense. But renting the only copy of the map that shows every single place you have ever driven? Yeah, no, that does not make sense. And that's the fundamental difference we keep collapsing when we talk about renting AI. Renting the raw intelligence makes absolute sense, but renting the memory of every single decision your business has ever made is just a massive liability.
So let's visualize how this translates into a strict separation. This is your new blueprint, what you should just subscribe to, and what you must fiercely protect before your next rollout.
Okay, let's look at the rent side first. You should absolutely be renting the frontier model itself, the raw compute and inference, and any novel capabilities literally the moment they ship. Why? Because the cost curves are dropping monthly. It makes zero economic sense to try and compete on raw processing power. Do not try to build your moat here.
But here is what you must strictly own. You need to own the record of the decisions your team actually made, the standards and skill files that describe how your team works, because those need to survive even if you swap vendors tomorrow. You have to own the audit trail of exactly what an agent read and did. And most importantly, you need the precise permission boundary. You need to know exactly which accounts an agent can touch and who physically signs off before it acts.
Moving on to Act 3, the proof and the complication. Now, if you think memory is just some sort of, chat convenience, look at what Anthropic just did. They gave Claude managed agents inspectable controls. Users can now view, edit, add, and delete memories. That is a massive vendor admission. It proves that memory is separable infrastructure, not just a neat little software feature. If memory requires its own edit and delete controls just for an agent to function properly, it's infrastructure, period.
But here's the immediate complication with that. Self-hosted memory that nobody curates, that can actually distract an agent and cause it to misfire just as easily as rented memory can. There's a recent Hacker News thread pointing exactly this out. Agents getting completely lost based on old, irrelevant context. So simply hoarding data on your own servers and saying, hey, we own it, that's not the fix. Ownership without curation is still a major liability. So, how do we fix it? Act 4, the resolution. Since hoarding uncurated memory is a liability, how do we safely operate this infrastructure? Well, the resolution is an immediate, tactical ritual that you should be running every single month. We call it the Approval Boundary Audit. Here is the exact checklist you need to run with your engineering teams. First, you're going to name every live agent integration you currently have. Next, name the exact verb it performs. Is it reading, drafting, or is it auto-executing? Third, define the safety condition required for that action to actually be safe. Fourth, and this is absolutely crucial, confirm that condition is actively enforced in your code, not just sitting on some wiki page. Then, log the near misses, and finally, assign one named owner who is responsible for rechecking this exact list next month.
If you take away just one thing from today's explainer, let it be this. The model was never the risky rental. The unaudited memory was. That is where the actual danger to your operations lives, and that is exactly where you need to build your defensive moat.
So, I want to leave you with a provocative question to test your own infrastructure today. What is the one agent action in your workflow right now that could fire without explicit approval? And who in your company would find out about it first? Kind of scary to think about, right? If you want to dive into the full breakdown and get the complete audit ritual, be sure to check out the source analysis on Substack. Catch you next time.